Not all HTML elements accept ARIA labels. So in today's video, I'll be showing you a list of roles that do not accept ARIA labels. I'll be showing you practically using a screen reader. Then I'll show you some points I've seen on the internet where the ARIA labels were misused. So now let's jump right into it. If you want to learn more about accessible names and ARIA labels, there should be a link popping up at the top as well as in the description. In today's video, we are focusing on the roles that do not accept ARIA labels. Now, one thing you need to note is that there is a difference between the HTML element and the role. You can have a HTML element like the anchor tag, the A tag, but it has a role equal to button. So it is functioning as a button, although it is an A tag. The same thing with a div. You can have a div, but that div has a role equal to region. So now it's acting as a landmark region, although it is a div. So now let's go ahead and see the roles that do not accept ARIA labels. So the list include the code element, the caption, and so many other ones. But the main ones you need to remember are the role equal to generic, the role equal to presentation or none, and the role equal to paragraph. So those are the ones that some people might get confused and add ARIA labels to, thinking that they've done something good, but not knowing that it's not actually doing anything. Now, let's take a look at some practical examples. I'll be using a link, a paragraph, and a div. I'll be using Bricks Builder for this first part of the presentation. Then we'll jump into Elementor and we'll continue from there. So now let's jump back in. So here we are in Bricks. Let me go ahead and drop in my 3 elements. I'll be using the basic text element for all 3 of them because in Bricks, we have the flexibility to apply any HTML tag and any attribute you want to any element. So let me put the basic text 3 times. The first one will be our A tag. The second one will be the P tag. And the last will be our div. Or let me make it 4 elements. So I'll duplicate it. This will be a div with the role, which is the generic role. Then the second one will have the role equal to region. So those are our 4 elements. So now let me start. The first element, I'll say the A tag, and we'll basically give it an A tag by coming over here, custom, and we can just say A, and I will add a link to, let's say, the sample page. Let's go ahead and press save. And let me go ahead and preview it on the front end to make sure it's working. So this is the A tag. Let me go ahead and inspect it. Make sure nothing is broken. So you see we have our A tag and it has the link. Okay. Let me close this. Then we'll go to the next one, which is the P tag. I'll give it the HTML tag of P and I'll say the paragraph. Okay. The next one is a div. I'll say the generic div. The last one will be the region div. Okay, save this. So we have our 4 elements. Now let's start playing around with the ARIA label. So I'll be using the NVDA screen reader because I'm on a Windows computer, and that is what we'll be using for our test. So first, we have all of these 4 elements. We'll go ahead and test them out using the screen reader. Let me go in. And first, let me make sure I put the right role for the second div. So I'll come under the style tab, under attributes, add attribute, and I'll say I want this time the role should be equal to region. Save it. Refresh. So we have all 4 of them. First, let me go ahead and show you the HTML output. You can see all four of them: A tag, the P tag, the div, and the second div with a role equal to region. We can go ahead and check the accessibility tree. If you don't have this icon showing up, you will just simply come over to these two arrows and you go to accessibility. Then make sure you activate this enable full page accessibility tree. Once you do that, it will ask you to reload the DevTools and you get your icon. Okay, so that's it. So now I can now click on the accessibility tree and we can see all of them. The first one is a link. This is the name. This is a tag. The other one is a paragraph. And you'll notice that although there's text inside, it doesn't have a name. It's blank. And then we have the next one. It just says static text and static text. So now let's go ahead and start trying to add the names to the ARIA labels. So before we do that, we'll do the first test with our screen reader. I'll turn on NVDA. Okay. It's turned on. Now I'll start.
About bricks and bricks. Primer. About event. Blog link.
So I'll be using the arrow keys to navigate now. So the down arrow key.
Out of list main landmark link the A tag.
So the A tag. Link the A tag.
The paragraph.
The paragraph.
The generic div.
The generic div.
The region div.
The region div. So all of the names are, as we are seeing them visibly, is what is getting announced to a screen reader. Now let's go ahead and change the ARIA labels and see which of them will change the way they are announced to screen readers and which ones won't.
Exit NVDA dialog.
So I'll come to the first one. I'll come under attributes, add attribute, say ARIA label, and I'll say not any tag. Second one, the paragraph tag, same thing. I'll come to the attribute, say ARIA label. I'll say the second tag. The generic div, I'll do the same thing. ARIA label. A named div. The fourth one, give it an ARIA label, and I'll call it a named region. Okay, let's go ahead and save it and see if the names actually change. So I'll come back, I'll refresh. First, we'll look at the HTML accessibility tree. So inspect. Then I'll go to the stickman and let's see. So first one, we can see we've now given them names. So these are the names that are supposed to be announced. Let's see if it actually gets announced. Okay, so I'll leave both of them open. Turn on my screen reader. Okay.
The paragraph. About bricks and bricks for banner landmark. About event. Blog link.
Okay, now let's start pressing the down arrow key.
Out of list main landmark link not any tag.
Okay, so the link now says not any tag. So that means the ARIA label kicked in. The next one is the paragraph. It should say the second tag.
The paragraph.
It still says the paragraph. That means the ARIA label did not work. Although we are seeing it in the accessibility tree that it is given a name, but that name is not going to be translated to the screen reader. The next one.
The generic div.
It says the generic div. Even though if you look at the
generic,
it says
a named div.
A named div here. But if I come back into the element,
a name out of region, the generic div.
It says the generic div. That means the ARIA label did not kick in. So this is what you're supposed to pay attention to now. This is a div that has no role. It is given a role of generic, and from that list, a role of generic has no name. It cannot be named. The last one now is the region, because I've given it a role now. It now has an important role. So let's see.
A named region, the region div.
So you see, it now announces the name. But see how it worked. First of all, it told me a named region, which is the name of the region. Then it still announced the text content which was in it, because the div is like a container. What's now happening is that it is announcing that name of the container, but the container still has elements inside. The elements are the static elements. So let me go ahead and close this.
Exit NVDA.
So the way the div works is that if you go ahead and expand it, you now see it says static text. That's the same thing with the paragraph. You see this static text. So the way it works is that the name on this paragraph is ignored. The only thing that gets announced to the screen reader is the actual static text. That's why even though we changed the name, this was still being announced because the paragraph and the name were ignored. Well, in the case of this region, because the region is a role that is recognized, it now announces the name and then the role, but it still has to announce what is inside. So the static text inside. So that's why it announced the static text as well. So that is the difference between all of them. So now let's switch over to Elementor, and I'll point out a few elements I've seen in Elementor where they apply the ARIA label to the wrong elements. That is, to elements that do not accept ARIA labels. I think the reason they did that was because of they're trying to create a unified code. So sometimes they remove the role, but they still leave the ARIA label there. So now let's take a look. So here we are in Elementor. The three elements we'll be taking a look at are the accordion, then we'll take a look at the tab, and we'll also take a look at the menu widget. That is the new menu widget. But I think all three of them were created using a unified code. So all three of them have issues with the way they apply ARIA labels. And let me go to the front end. We'll start with the first one. Right click, inspect, and we'll look at the accessibility tree to just give us a quick overview. And you see, it has a role equal to generic, but it has a name. That means they've applied an ARIA label to a generic div, which means the whole of this thing is meaningless. And I'm even thankful they did that because, like I've said in my previous video, this is not a name. This is a description. So if you want to show this kind of description, you should be doing it with an ARIA described by. That's where you can describe the action. A name is supposed to just be someone's name, like the name of the accordion, not trying to describe the actions we take with the accordion. Then it's the same thing with all the other ones. I think the tab has something very similar. You see it again. It just says tab, and then it starts to read out this long, but it is applied to a generic div. Generic divs don't get announced. So everything here is not going to be announced to a screen reader. It's not going to be shown visibly. It's not going to be announced to anybody. So I don't really see the point of actually adding those things, apart from maybe some kind of code commenting. Maybe you're trying to comment on the code, because this is not useful to anybody who is visiting your site. Same thing with the other element, which is the menu widget. They have same thing. You can see generic with the menu toggle. So that whole ARIA label of menu toggle is applied to the wrong element. And let me go ahead and even see where the element is. So let's go ahead and try to find it out. ARIA labeled by, yes, this is it. So they have a div which has absolutely no role, getting an ARIA labeled by, and that ARIA labeled by is coming toward the toggle, which is this button that's supposed to trigger the mobile menu. So the whole thing is just not working out. So that's one thing that I've been speaking to them a couple of times in like scattered explanations. I've been pointing out in different ways. I've not actually gone to tell them directly that this is what I've noticed, but I've just been pointing it out in different ways. But the idea is that they keep adding like ARIA labels in a way that I don't even recommend, and to elements that I don't recommend. So hopefully Elementor will look into this and get rid of all of those ARIA labels And I'm sure some people may have noticed that I put the one-click accessibility plugin on the website. I'm basically just testing it, and I have no comments about it for now, but we'll see how it goes in the future. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.